Hi everyone, my name is Hannah and my horror game is called Trivia Thrill. Trivia Thrill is a team-based trivia game that can be played solo or in teams of 2 or 3. All of the questions are horror-related in some way, including questions about video games, novels, films, and more. Additionally, all trivia questions are multiple choice. On trivia spaces, teams must answer 3 trivia questions to move on, where incorrect answers do not reset team progress. However, on super trivia spaces, teams must get 5 trivia questions correct in a row in order to move on. But super trivia questions are pulled from a small question pool and can be eventually memorized. When playing in teams, the questions are naturally divided between teammates, but teams can use items to work around this if a teammate gets stuck. Furthermore, teams can only move forwards through the map and cannot move backwards. When teams land on item spaces, each player receives a random item and may individually choose when to use it. Lastly, teams can still progress even if only one team member answered all of the trivia questions. The primary goal of Trivia Thrill is to move around the map by answering trivia questions and use items to set the enemy team back. The first team to the finish space wins. This means that the only winning condition is to reach the finish space first. Along the way, teams must overcome challenges such as trivia questions, racing the enemy team, using items strategically, communicating with teammates accordingly, no time limit or turn sequence, meaning that teams must work quickly. For teams willing to face these challenges, they will be rewarded with the ownership of the Haunted Manor, and the new reigning team will be able to add more trivia questions to the game for other players to enjoy. Although players may struggle to progress through the game, so be sure to use items to strategize and work with your teammates to spread out questions. Efficiency is key in Trivia Thrill. Here are some example trivia questions with answers. Feel free to read through them in order to better understand the game. Now for some story. The infamous Haunted Manor is looking for new kings and queens. Only the most haunted horror heroes can rightfully reside inside the manor. In order to prove their worth to the manor, heroes must know everything about horror in order to impress the current kings and queens. If the heroes fail to impress the kings and queens, then the manor will no longer exist and the heroes will lose their haunted powers. Here are some heroes or avatars that teams can choose from. Please keep in mind that these are solely cosmetic to represent each player and that these avatars have no special abilities. Let's go over some items that players can use. These can be used at any point in the game, and each player or teammate has a personal inventory, so items are not shared between teammates. The first and most common item is the Haunted Candle, which gives the player a hint about the answer to the current trivia question. The next item is the Bat Wings, which allows the player to skip the current trivia question. Players can also utilize cauldrons, where you can pass a trivia question that was given to a specific player to a teammate of the player's choice. Finally, the last item is poison that players can use to poison the enemy team and give a random opponent an extra question to answer immediately. Here is the map key for the upcoming slide. There are only 4 spaces to memorize: the start and finish space, the trivia space, the item space, and the super trivia space. You can read the description of each space below the title to see what each space does. However, the spaces are relatively straightforward besides the super trivia space. Now that we have reviewed the map key, let's take a look at the Haunted Manor itself. Players spawn on the start space and must make their way to the final space. There are 4 total trivia checkpoints for players to pass through, so be sure to save some items for these spaces. Finally, the playtesting directions. The first step is to start by drawing out the map layout to the best of your ability. As long as you draw the shapes correctly for each space, you should not need to color it unless it is desired. The second step is often the hardest part, where players have a choice between creating their own trivia questions or finding some online. If you're playing with a big group of friends, I recommend creating your own questions so that people can study them and practice for the game. Although searching for questions online is much faster and typically more fair as well. So for the sake of the playtest, I recommend using pre-made questions and studying them briefly before playing. Next, players must decide on team dynamics and setup, where the most important aspect is that the teams are equal to keep the game fair. For those who want to play against an AI, the AI can be represented by dice with an analog playtest to determine what questions they receive and if they get the questions correct or wrong. Time for the best step. Each player must pick an avatar to represent them on the board, but make sure that each team picks 3 different avatars between them, and avatars can only repeat if the avatars are on opposite teams. Once everyone picks an avatar, place all of the avatars on the starting space and begin playing using the directions in the slideshow. Keep in mind that you must move 1 space at a time and honor the rules to keep the game challenging and fun. After a team makes it to the final space, the game has been won and the playtest is over. Let me know how your playtest goes and if you have any questions or suggestions for Trivia Thrill. Thank you.